Welcome to lecture 31 of Strategic Human Resource Management, and the topic which we are going to cover today is Global Human Resource Management. I am Dr. Tripti Barthwal. I am Director, Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Management and Development Studies, Lucknow. So, I am sure that you must have studied HRM as a core subject, and you know what human resource management is and what are the functions of an HR manager. So, when an HR manager is dealing with employees who belong to a particular nation, or they are confined to a national boundary, then in that case also managing of human resources coming from different backgrounds, having different perceptions is a challenge. And now you can well assume that when we have employees who are coming from different nations, who have been somebody belonging to India has been posted to US. So, people must be going through lot of challenges, and when employees face challenges, the challenge eventually comes to human resource managers. So, in that perspective, the discussion on global human resource management becomes very important. So, we start from here. So, let us first take the term itself, global HRM, and global HRM, you can see that there are two words through which this term has been made, and one is global, and global means when an organization when there is globalization and an organization moves beyond its boundaries, beyond its national borders. So, globalization is the tendency of firms to extend their sales ownership on manufacturing to new markets abroad. And you can very well understand that when an organization will move its operations to some other country, then it cannot be done just merely by sending machines or capital or technology abroad. One has to move people also to the new location, to the new international location, and that is why HRM comes into picture. So, human resource management is the process of acquiring, training, appraising and compensating employees and attending to their labor relations, health and safety concerns. So, you must have all studied the functions or operative functions of a human resource manager, and they are procurement of human resource, that is their recruitment, selection, or what we call as the acquisition function also. Then you must be aware of the training and development function, then the performance appraisal or evaluation of performance, then the integration functions, how you can continue to have engaged employees in the workforce, and then also the separation functions, that is if in case the organization is asking the employee to quit, or the employee himself is resigning, or due to certain unavoidable reasons, there is a separation. So, all these activities come under the purview of human resource management. Now, global human resource management, also referred as international HRM, is the procurement, allocation, utilization and motivation of human resources in international business. So, when we combine these two terms, then when everything what we do in human resource management comes in the global or in the international perspective. It is the interaction between three groups of factors. Now, what are these three factors? First is of course, when we are talking about HRM, then employees have to be a part of it. Then environment of countries. Because as the machines may not be so much affected by the environment, the infrastructure may not be affected by environment, but people who are working in the organization, they are very much impacted by the environment of a place where they are working. So, it is very important that we take that into consideration. In fact, all or let me say not all, but majorly the HR policies and practices also change according to the environment, the political, legal environment of the new country. and then the basic HR processes. So, the basic HR processes of procurement, selection, appraisal, training and development, integration would remain the same, but they will have to be tweaked according to the new environment in which the organization has entered. So, need for global HRM. So, first is cultural factor. So, why do we need to focus so much on international or global HRM? First is because the culture of the home country and the country where the organization is setting up its new base would be totally different. So, people need to be adapting according to the culture of that new place. So, countries differ widely in their cultures in the basic values their citizens adhere to. So, in fact, even in a particular country also, people coming from different regions, people coming from different areas, people coming from different states, they have their own culture and traditions, and they have their own value systems also, which may be different slightly, or they may be different largely from the other people who have come from different backgrounds. So, cultural differences from country to country necessitate corresponding differences in management practices among a company's subsidiaries. So, subsidiaries, I am sure you understand that, you know, if a company which is based in US is starting, it has started in India, its operations in India, then it will be in the form of a subsidiary. So, so you have to, as a company, adopt according to the culture of the new country or the new location in which you are setting up base. Then a key trait of effective global human resource management is to understand and reconcile cultural differences. So, you know, people will be coming from different cultures, different backgrounds. So, the smoothing has to be done. We can't you know, just have totally people you know, having different sets of opinions and views. So, there has to be certain set of smoothing, right, and organization, and you know, as a result of differences in people's opinion, there are bound to be conflicts, there are bound to be issues. So, we require to harmonize those relationships. So, that is why global human resource management becomes important. Then different cultural norms and nuances, color issues, gestures, societal norms, power distance relationships, recruiting efforts and performance management must be clearly understood on a country to country basis. So, I am sure you must be all aware that still though we have progressed so much, you know, lot of you know, people have been educated in comparison to the last decades. Still, you know, the entire world faces discrimination, or there are issues of discrimination, there are cases of discrimination reported throughout the world. And many discrimination is based, much of the discrimination is based on the color of the skin, which is very unfortunate, but it is true. So, in maybe in UK, Indians, Asians may be treated as second rate citizens because the color of their skin is different from the people in UK and Europe. So, I will not say that everybody would discriminate, but there are cases related to discrimination. So, now when an employee who is going for the first time to such a culture, he may be taken aback. He may not be able to adjust. It may not be a very pleasant you know, experience for him. So, he needs to be prepared, and not only he needs to be prepared, but also all employees which the organization will be taking from UK, who belong to UK, they should also be sensitized that, you know, they should, if they have any kind of prejudice related to color, they will have to give up with that, because it is required for the smooth functioning of the organization. Then, for example, in a study of about 330 managers from Hong Kong, the People's Republic of China, the United States, the US managers tended to be concerned with getting the job done. So, depending on the culture, the managerial orientations would also change, the thought process of people will also change, how they react to situations will also change, how they work, how they treat others will also change. So, in this study where 4 countries were involved, it was found that the American managers were most concerned about that work should be done, right, that was their topmost priority, whereas managers from China were concerned with maintaining harmonious environment. So, they were more concerned about good interpersonal relationships with their people, and work also needed to be done, but priority number 1 was people should be happy, and Hong Kong managers fell between the 2 extremes. So, when, as you can see, that as culture changes, work styles changes, work ethics change, and hence it is very important challenge, and it is a very important issue of concern for human resource managers. Then economic systems of countries may differ from each other, and these also have a bearing on the HR practices of the organization. Some countries have a capitalist economy, some socialist, while the others have a mixed economy. I am sure you must be aware of what these 3 terms mean. A change in the nature of the economy brings about a change in the laws related to the employers and employees' duties and accountabilities. So, as the economic systems change, as the if a country is moving from capitalist through socialist economy or vice versa, it will have an immediate bearing, though it is an economic factor, it will have an immediate bearing on how we see our employees, how we treat our employees. Obviously, in a capitalist economy, the employer or the capital would be of utmost importance, and employees would come second. For instance, France, though a capitalist economy, later imposed tight restrictions on employees' rights to discharge workers and limited the number of hours and employees could legally work each week. So, you can see herself in the example that how much of change was brought about when the country changed its economic system. Though France did not largely from a capitalist economy, it did not move to a socialist economy, but still there was a little change, right, in its philosophy, and as a little change in the philosophy, what happened? They started having a lot of concern for their workers, they started giving more importance to them, and then they restricted as a result of that. Otherwise, prior to that, the employer's right to hire and fire employees was absolute. There was no question on that, right. But as they had a change in the philosophy, then they restricted employers' right to discharge workers and limited the number of hours an employee could legally work. So, there are a lot of good things, lot of positive interventions were made for the employees because just a little change in the philosophy. Then the third set of factors, which are of course very important, are the legal and political factors. Legal as well as political factors may vary from country to country. So, obviously laws of, we say law of the land, and so how the political system works, what the law says will differ from country to country. US firms are accustomed to a relatively stable political system, and the same is true in many of the other developed countries in Europe. So, governments may change in these countries, but more or less the political system, the way how the country is being governed and the laws will remain more or less the same. Same applies to India also. We may have different political parties coming to power at different times, but more basically the framework of the constitution, the framework of the legal system by and far remains the same. Although presidents, prime ministers, premiers, governors, senators and representatives may change, the legal systems are well established and global firms can depend on continuity and consistency. So, that gives a lot of security and relief to companies who are moving to such countries, because they know that if today if they have, when they have entered, this is the political legal system. So, even if whosoever comes to power, they are sure that 15 years, 20 years down the line also the same things will, little changes maybe will continue. So, little modifications here and there is fine, but a total overhaul of the system, that no business would prefer. So, it gives a lot of confidence to them, but if they do not want to move to a country where as the government changes, or every 2-3 years the systems change. However, in many other nations and legal and political systems are turbulent, like for example, our next door neighbor Pakistan. So, very turbulent political systems, and government is very frequently overthrown by military coups, and legal system vary in character and stability, with business contracts sometimes being unenforceable because of internal political factors. So, many times if you have entered into a contract with somebody and you cannot enforce that contract because the legal systems have changed. So, that becomes a great pain point for the business. In the US, the practice of employment at will does not exist in Europe, where firing and laying off workers is usually time consuming and expensive. So, there in US and the practice or Europe, there is no very quick hiring and firing, because they consider that that takes a lot of time to find new employees, then to train them and then make them get to work. So, it is better to continue with the employees who are already there. Legal as well political factors vary from country to country. We have already discussed this. In many European countries, work councils replace the informal or union based worker management mediations typical in US firms. Work councils, you must have studied in IR, are formal employee selected groups of worker representatives that meet monthly with managers to discuss topics ranging from no smoking policies to layoffs. So, in European countries, there is not much of informal union based worker management relationships. They basically bank on work councils. So, a lot of topics concerning workers are discussed here, and so different countries, different practices. Now, what are the when we talk about global human resource management, then we need to understand the basic differences between domestic human resource management and global or international human resource management. So, first is that though as I said, the basic level of activities, the type of activities would remain the same whether you are operating in a domestic environment or in a global environment, but the scale will be different. So, there will be more and varied activities. In international HRM, the volume of the same HR activities which are relevant for domestic HRM increases, because these activities have to be performed in a different context. So, as I said, the basic nature of the activity will remain the same, but because the political legal environment is different, the economic environment is different. So, you have to fine tune your functions, your activities according to them. For example, when an employee is chosen for an international assignment, he needs additional training which would enable him to adjust to the new environment. This training will be in addition to the training meant for skill development for performing the job effectively. So, you can see the scale of activity increases, because if you are just posting an employee in a domestic environment, you only need to train him for the skill related to the job. But when you are posting him on an international operation, then there you have to train him according to the new environment, how he will what things, new things will he face, and how is he going to adjust to those things. So, you have to take care of that. Then next is need for broader perspective. So, when the activities will be new, varied, so you require a much broader perspective also. HR managers have to consider a variety of factors in making decisions on any issue of international HRM. Many of these factors are not relevant in the case of domestic HRM. Many of these factors will not exist there. For example, while fixing international compensation packages, HR managers have to take into account the cost of living of different international locations to bring some kind of parity among employees working at different locations. So, this is very, very obvious also that there may be countries which have a very high cost of living, there may be countries where the cost of living may be low. So, and if you have operations spread up over 30 countries, then maybe some may be on the extreme top, some countries may be on the extreme bottom, some may be in the average level. So, how do you fix a salary or a compensation package for the employees so that they are able to cover their cost of living also, and the employees do not get across the countries do not get demotivated also that they are getting somebody is getting higher package, somebody is getting lower package. So, that is a very big challenge. Similarly, fringe benefits have to be provided to suit conditions of different locations. Then next is more involvement in employees' personal life. So, when I am working in my own country, then I have my people around, I have my relatives around, I have my family around, I have my friends around. So, if I face any personal issue or a personal problem, then there are many people whom I can look up to. But when I am on an international assignment, then what happens? I feel alone. When I face an issue. So, whom do I look up to? To my organization, to my HR manager. So, there in international assignments, that is how employees tend to have lot of faith and lot of dependency on the human resource managers, and hence their involvement into their personal life becomes much more. As compared to domestic HRM, HR managers are required to have more involvement in employees' personal lives in case of international HRM. The higher level of involvement is required to ensure that the employees are suitably placed in an international location with which they are familiar, which with they are not familiar. So, new location they are not familiar with. This lack of familiarity may be on a number of factors, like they may not be knowing how to get a good house, what is the rent like, healthcare practices, meeting of legal requirements of host country. So, there may be many issues where they require help. And then there is a change in the employee mix. When we are working in a country, then we have only people belonging to that country in the workforce. But when we move internationally, then we have people from several countries comprising of the workforce. So, very often it happens that when an organization establishes a business in a foreign country, it recruits more number of employees from the country of its origin. So, whenever if an Indian company is moving abroad, so let us say Tata is moving abroad, so first priority it will want to take its own Indian people, its own Indian employees abroad, because they know the company, they know the culture, and they are trained also. So, it is very easy to gel in. But when you move abroad, then you require new people, you require more people, and of course, you have to protect an image also, that you have just not come here for earning profits, you have here to generate employment also. So, you have to acquire people from there also, from the host country. As a result, over a period of time, the proportion of local employees becomes sizable. This strategy is adopted by most of the multinationals, and this process is taken on a gradual basis, because you cannot just increase the number of employees suddenly from the host country. So, it has to be a slow and steady process. And then because of a new environment, you face more external influences in comparison to international human resource management. There is a saying, farther away a business goes, more influences it has to face, because within its own boundaries it is facing influences, but it is very much used to it. So, when you go outside, then you have to face lot of other influences. So, it is true for international HRM also. As compared to domestic HRM, international HRM activities are influenced by a variety of external factors. HR managers are required to deal with a new set of social cultural milieu, political and legal system, etc., which we have already discussed in the first part of the lecture, that what are the forces in the environment which make domestic HRM different from international HRM, or which makes the whole discussion on global HRM relevant. Not only they have to change their mindset to work in this new set, but they have to train the employees to adjust with the new set. So, that becomes a very, very big challenge. In fact, effectiveness of HR depends to a very great extent on the degree of such adjustments. So, if the employees are able to adjust nicely, which is a big challenge as I said, but if it is done, then there is lot of growth for the organization. Everything is good, everything is sorted. But in case if employees are not able to adjust, then it can call for ruin of the organization, losses for the organization, etc., etc. So, I am sure that now you must have understood what global human resource management is, how it is different from domestic human resource management, what are the factors which make an influence on international human resource management, which are not there in domestic HRM, and as a result of these factors, how the role of an HR manager in a domestic in a domestic setting changes from in comparison to when the HR manager is dealing with employees on a global setting. So, thank you so much.